Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck of Titan Station 7, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The glass was cool against his forehead as he leaned forward, his breath fogging the surface briefly before disappearing. For centuries, humanity had looked to the heavens, sending signals into the void, hoping for a response. But there had been nothing, just silence. A cold, unbroken silence that stretched across light years and generations. It made Daniel wonder sometimes if they were truly alone. Behind him, the hum of machinery filled the air. The station was alive with activity, engineers and technicians moving through the corridors like ants tending to their colony. They were all part of the Titan Initiative, a massive project launched by the United Earth Coalition. Its purpose was simple: build defenses strong enough to protect Earth from any threat that might one day appear in the sky. No one knew when, or even if, that day would come. But the leaders of Earth weren't willing to take chances. Laura Bennett entered the room quietly, her boots making soft clicks against the metal floor. She carried a tablet under one arm, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. "Still brooding?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. Daniel turned to face her, offering a small smile. "Just thinking," he replied. "All this work, all these resources, and for what? We don't even know if anyone's out there." Laura shrugged, walking over to stand beside him. Her brown hair was tied back neatly, and her sharp green eyes scanned the stars beyond the glass. "Doesn't matter if they're out there or not," she said. "What matters is that we're ready. Humanity can't afford to be caught off guard again." Daniel nodded slowly, though doubt lingered in his mind. He had spent years designing and building the Titan stations, working long hours alongside Laura and countless others. Each station was a marvel of engineering, equipped with weapons powerful enough to vaporize asteroids and shields capable of withstanding impacts from meteors. Together, the network formed an impenetrable barrier around Earth, a wall of steel and energy meant to deter any alien aggressor. Yet despite all their efforts, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that it might never be enough. "Sometimes I think we're wasting our time," he admitted after a moment. "What if no one ever comes? What if we're just shouting into the darkness, hoping someone will hear us?" Laura tilted her head, considering his words. "Maybe," she said finally. "But isn't it better to shout and get no answer than to stay silent and regret it later?" Before Daniel could respond, a sudden alert blared through the station. Red lights flashed overhead, and the calm atmosphere dissolved into urgency. Both of them exchanged a glance before rushing toward the control center. Whatever was happening, it wasn't part of the usual routine. When they arrived, the room was already crowded with staff. Screens displayed streams of data, numbers scrolling rapidly as technicians worked to decipher the source of the disturbance. One of the operators turned to Laura, holding out a datapad. "Dr. Bennett, you need to see this." She took the device, scanning the information quickly. Her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. This isn't possible," she murmured. Daniel stepped closer, peering over her shoulder. The readout showed something unusual, a faint signal originating from deep space. It wasn't random noise. The patterns were too deliberate, too structured. Someone, or something, was trying to communicate. For a moment, the weight of the discovery hung heavy in the air. Then Laura looked up, meeting Daniel's gaze. "They thought no one would come," she whispered. But maybe they were wrong. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the lives below. Far away, something approached, unseen but undeniable, and Earth's quiet vigil was about to end. The signal from deep space became the center of attention overnight. Laura spent hours in the control room, her eyes glued to the monitors as streams of data poured in. The patterns were unlike anything she had ever seen, complex, rhythmic, and undeniably artificial. It wasn't just a random burst of energy. It was a message, carefully crafted, and sent across unimaginable distances. Daniel joined her frequently, bringing coffee and snacks, though neither of them ate much. They were too focused, too consumed by the enormity of what they might be witnessing. "It's not coming directly toward Earth," Laura said one evening, pointing at a map displayed on the main screen. "The signal is originating near Proxima Centauri, but its trajectory suggests it's heading somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" Daniel asked, leaning closer. "Like where?" Laura hesitated, scrolling through more data. "It's targeting an asteroid belt on the edge of our solar system. A dead zone. Really? No planets, no moons, just rocks floating in space." Daniel frowned. Why would anyone send a signal to an empty stretch of space? Unless, his voice trailed off, and he looked at Laura. "Unless they're planning to meet someone there." Laura nodded slowly. "Or something. But who? And why?" The question hung unanswered between them. Despite their excitement, a sense of unease crept into the station. The crew whispered about the implications of the discovery. Some believed it was proof that humanity wasn't alone, a sign that intelligent life existed beyond Earth. Others feared it might bring danger, a prelude to invasion or conflict. General Carter, the head of the United Earth Coalition's military division, visited the station personally to assess the situation. He was a tall man with graying hair and a stern expression, his presence commanding respect and obedience. "This changes everything," Carter said during a briefing. "If these beings are capable of crossing interstellar space, then we need to assume they're advanced, possibly more advanced than us. That doesn't necessarily mean they're hostile," Laura argued, though her tone lacked conviction. Even she couldn't ignore the possibility that the signal might herald trouble. Carter gave her a hard look. "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's always been our motto. Until we know more, I want every Titan station on high alert." As days turned into weeks, the signal grew stronger. Observatories around the world confirmed that a fleet of ships was approaching, moving steadily through the void. At first, only blurry images could be captured, but as the vessels drew nearer, their true size became apparent. Each ship was massive, larger than any human-made structure. Some were the size of small moons, their surfaces glinting faintly in the starlight. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "They're huge," Daniel muttered, staring at a live feed from one of the telescopes. "How do you even build something like that?" Laura didn't answer. She was busy analyzing new patterns embedded within the signal. To her surprise, the message contained more than just coordinates. It included fragments of information, almost like instructions. When pieced together, they formed a rudimentary map showing potential routes through the asteroid belt. Was it an invitation or a warning? "We need to tell someone," Daniel said, breaking the silence. "This isn't just a signal anymore. This is contact." Laura nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. And what if they don't come in peace? What if this is exactly what they want? To make us curious enough to investigate. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Then we'll deal with it when it happens. For now, all we can do is keep watching." Outside, the stars seemed brighter than usual, their light reflecting off the sleek surfaces of the approaching fleet. Humanity had waited centuries for this moment, hoping for connection, for understanding. But as the ships drew closer, casting long shadows across the cosmos, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they might regret ever answering the call. The days passed in a blur of tension and preparation. The fleet was now close enough to be seen without telescopes, its massive ships blotting out the stars as they moved through the solar system. From Earth, people watched in awe and fear as the dark shapes loomed larger each night. News outlets broadcast endless coverage, speculating about the intentions of the visitors. Some called them saviors, others invaders. No one knew for sure what they wanted or what they were capable of. Laura spent most of her time in the control room, tracking the fleet's movements. She noticed subtle changes in their trajectory, small adjustments that suggested precision and purpose. The ships weren't just drifting aimlessly. They were navigating with care, avoiding collisions with asteroids and debris. Whoever, or whatever, was piloting them had skill and intelligence far beyond human capabilities. "They're not here to destroy us," Laura said one evening, pointing at a graph on the screen. "If they wanted to attack, they could have done it already. They're taking their time." Daniel stood beside her, arms crossed. "That doesn't mean they're friendly. Maybe they're just being cautious, or maybe they're studying us before they make their move." Laura didn't argue. She couldn't deny the possibility that the fleet might pose a threat. Still, something about their behavior gave her hope. The signals they sent were consistent, almost rhythmic, as if trying to reassure rather than intimidate. It was hard to imagine such careful communication coming from an enemy. Meanwhile, General Carter pushed for increased readiness. Every Titan station was put on full alert, weapons systems powered up and shields reinforced. Crews worked around the clock to ensure everything functioned perfectly. Daniel supervised the efforts, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He knew the stations were humanity's best defense, but against ships that size, how effective would they really be? One night, as Laura analyzed new data, she detected something unusual. The largest ship in the fleet had slowed down significantly, hovering near the edge of the asteroid belt. Smaller vessels detached from it, spreading out in a wide arc. They seemed to be scanning the area, emitting low-frequency pulses that resonated through space. "What are they doing?" Daniel asked, peering over her shoulder. "I'm not sure," Laura admitted. "It looks like they're mapping the belt, maybe looking for resources or setting up some kind of base." Before they could discuss it further, alarms sounded throughout the station. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the asteroid belt, disrupting communications and causing minor malfunctions in nearby equipment. The crew scrambled to stabilize the systems while Laura tried to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. "It's coming from them," she said finally, her voice tight with worry. "They're testing us." "Testing us," Daniel echoed. "How?" Laura pointed at a series of readings on the screen. "These pulses, they're probing our defenses, seeing how we react, how strong we are." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So they know we're here, and they're figuring out what we can do." The realization weighed heavily on both of them. Humanity had spent years preparing for this moment, building weapons and shields to protect Earth. But now, faced with an unknown force, all their efforts felt inadequate. The fleet's sheer size and power made the Titan stations look like toys in comparison. As the hours dragged on, strange anomalies began appearing near the stations. Power fluctuations caused lights to flicker, and structural integrity warnings flashed intermittently. Daniel worked tirelessly to address the issues, but the problems kept multiplying. It was as if the fleet was testing the limits of Earth's technology, pushing it to the breaking point. Laura watched silently, her thoughts racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that the visitors weren't just curious. They were planning something. Whatever their intentions, humanity was running out of time to prepare. Outside, the shadow of the largest ship fell across the station, blocking out the stars. For the first time, Laura felt truly small, dwarfed by the enormity of what lay beyond Earth's skies. The fleet wasn't just a visitor. It was a reminder of how fragile humanity truly was. The moment everyone had been dreading and anticipating finally arrived. The largest ship descended into Earth's orbit, its sheer size blotting out the sun in some regions. It was a sight both breathtaking and terrifying, a colossus of metal and light that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As it hovered above the planet, a deep hum resonated through the atmosphere, rattling windows and sending shivers down spines. Humanity held its breath, unsure of what would happen next. Laura and Daniel were in the control room when the first communication came. At first, it wasn't words or sounds, it was images. Vivid, overwhelming images that flooded into the minds of everyone on Earth simultaneously. People dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as visions of distant stars, barren planets, and strange, towering beings filled their thoughts. The message was clear. These visitors called themselves the Vryn, a nomadic race fleeing a dying galaxy. They sought refuge in Earth's solar system, offering knowledge and advanced technology in exchange for sanctuary. They're not here to fight, Laura whispered, her voice trembling as the images faded. They're here to survive. Daniel didn't respond immediately. He stared at the screens, watching as smaller ships began deploying from the main vessel. They moved with precision, positioning themselves around Earth's orbit like sentinels. Despite the peaceful tone of the message, the display of power was unmistakable. The Vrin weren't asking. They were stating their intentions. General Carter wasted no time calling an emergency meeting. Leaders from around the globe gathered virtually, their faces tense and weary. The debate was fierce. Some argued that welcoming the Vrin could bring unimaginable benefits, cures for diseases, solutions to environmental crises, and technologies beyond human comprehension. Others, like Carter, warned of the risks. "We don't know who they are or what they want," he said, his voice sharp. "For all we know, this is a trick, a way to lull us into complacency before they strike." Laura listened silently, her mind racing. She wanted to believe the Vrin's intentions were genuine, but doubts gnawed at her. Why would such an advanced civilization need Earth? What did humanity have to offer them? And why had they chosen this moment to arrive? As the discussions dragged on, Ambassador Ryan stepped forward, a tall, wiry man with thinning hair. Ryan had been chosen to lead Earth's diplomatic efforts. "We have no choice but to engage," he said firmly. "If we refuse to communicate, we risk provoking them. And if they are as powerful as they seem, we cannot afford to make an enemy of them." Reluctantly, the coalition agreed. Ryan prepared to send a response, crafting a message of cautious welcome. Meanwhile, Laura and Daniel worked tirelessly to monitor the fleet's activities. They noticed subtle changes in the Vrin's behavior. Smaller ships began scanning Earth's surface, emitting low-frequency pulses that disrupted satellite signals and caused temporary blackouts. The intrusions were minor but deliberate, as if the Vrin were testing Earth's patience. "They're pushing boundaries," Daniel muttered one night, frustration evident in his voice. "Every time we think we've figured them out, they do something else." Laura nodded, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across her screen. "It's like they're gauging our limits, seeing how much we'll tolerate before we push back." The tension reached a breaking point when one of the Vrin ships approached a Titan station too closely. Its massive bulk passed within kilometers, causing structural alarms to blare. Daniel rushed to stabilize the station, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. For a moment, it felt as though the entire structure might collapse under the gravitational pull of the alien vessel. "They're toying with us," Daniel growled, slamming his fist against the console. "This isn't curiosity, it's arrogance." Laura placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to calm him. "We can't let our emotions get the better of us. If we act rashly, it could escalate into something we can't control." But even as she spoke, unease settled over her. The Vrin's actions were growing bolder, their presence more intrusive. Earth's leaders scrambled to find common ground, but trust was fragile at best. Every interaction felt like walking a tightrope, one misstep away from disaster. Outside, the shadow of the Vrin fleet loomed over Earth, a constant reminder of the power imbalance. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but now that it had come, the reality was far more complicated and dangerous than anyone had imagined. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Vrin's actions were too calculated, their movements too precise. While Ambassador Ryan continued his diplomatic efforts, she spent long hours in the control room, analyzing every piece of data the fleet emitted. It was during one of these late-night sessions that she stumbled upon something troubling. Hidden within the low-frequency pulses sent by the Vrin ships were fragments of information, codes and patterns that didn't match the peaceful messages they had broadcast earlier. "Daniel," she called out, her voice sharp with urgency. "Come look at this." He hurried over, his face pale from exhaustion. "What is it?" She pointed to her screen, where lines of data scrolled rapidly. "These pulses, they're not just scans. They're extracting information from our satellites, Our stations, even Earth's surface. Daniel frowned, leaning closer. You think they're spying on us? I don't think, Laura said firmly. I know. Look at this. She pulled up a series of intercepted signals, showing how the Vrin were mapping Earth's resources, water supplies, mineral deposits, energy grids. They're cataloging everything. Like they're planning something. Daniel's jaw tightened. Planning what? An invasion. I don't know, Laura admitted, running a hand through her hair. But it doesn't feel like they're here just to ask for help. The discovery weighed heavily on both of them. They debated whether to share it with General Carter and the coalition leaders, but Laura hesitated. If we tell them now, it could spark panic, or worse, an attack. We need proof, something concrete. Determined to uncover more, Laura dug deeper into the data. Her breakthrough came late one night when she isolated a fragment of the Vrin's communication. It wasn't directed at Earth, it was internal, a message passed between their ships. Using an algorithm she had developed years ago, she managed to partially decode it. What she found chilled her to the bone. They weren't exiled, she whispered, staring at the screen in disbelief. They destroyed their own galaxy. Daniel leaned over her shoulder, reading the fragmented translation. What does that mean? It means they didn't flee because they had no choice, Laura explained, her voice trembling. They consumed everything. Their planets, their stars, their resources. When there was nothing left, they moved on. That's why they're here. Daniel sank into a chair, his mind reeling. So they're not refugees. They're predators. Before they could decide what to do next, their activities caught the attention of the Vrin. A sudden surge of energy swept through the station, causing lights to flicker and alarms to blare. The main screen went dark for a moment before displaying a single clear image, a warning. It was a symbol Laura recognized from their earlier communications, but this time it pulsed red, almost angrily. They know we're watching them, Daniel said, his voice tense. Laura nodded, her heart pounding. And they're telling us to stop. Ambassador Ryan arrived moments later, his face pale. What's going on? The Vrin just cut off negotiations. They say we violated their trust. We have proof, Laura said quickly. They're not here for refuge. They're here to take what they need and leave us with nothing. Ryan shook his head, his expression grim. If you go public with this, it'll mean war. We can't fight them, Laura. Not yet. But if we don't act, they'll destroy us, Daniel argued. We can't just sit back and wait for them to make the first move. The room fell silent as the weight of their situation settled over them. Outside, the shadow of the Vrin fleet loomed larger than ever, its presence a constant reminder of humanity's vulnerability. Laura clenched her fists, determination burning in her chest. If Earth was to survive, they needed to act, and fast. For now, though, the truth remained hidden, known only to a few. And as the Vrin continued their methodical survey of Earth's resources, the clock ticked closer to a confrontation neither side might be ready for. Laura and Daniel knew they were running out of time. The Vrin had already begun mining operations in the asteroid belt, ignoring Earth's protests. Ambassador Ryan tried to negotiate, but his messages went unanswered. It was clear the Vrin no longer cared about diplomacy. They had taken what they wanted, and now they were preparing to take more. We can't let them keep doing this, Laura said, pacing the control room. If we don't stop them now, they'll strip Earth bare. Daniel nodded, his face pale with exhaustion. But how? Their ships are too big, their shields too strong. We're outmatched. Laura stopped pacing and turned to him. Not entirely. Remember that program I embedded into the Titan stations years ago? The one designed to link them together. Daniel's eyes widened. The synchronization pulse. You think it could work against them? It's our only shot, Laura said firmly. If we channel all the power from the Titan stations into a single concentrated beam, we might be able to disable their flagship. Without it, their fleet will lose coordination. But it's risky, Daniel warned. If we use all the power for the pulse, the stations will be defenseless afterward. If this doesn't work, Earth won't have any protection left." "I know," Laura admitted, her voice softening. "But if we don't try, we're already lost." They worked through the night, reactivating old systems and rerouting energy flows. The process was painstaking, requiring precision and teamwork. As they labored, the tension outside grew thicker. General Carter ordered the remaining functional Titan stations to prepare for battle, though he didn't know about Laura and Daniel's plan. The crew buzzed with nervous energy, everyone aware that war might break out at any moment. Finally, just as dawn broke over Earth, Laura completed the final sequence. "It's ready," she said, her hands trembling slightly as they hovered over the controls. "All we need to do is activate it." Before they could proceed, an alarm blared through the station. A Vrin ship had moved dangerously close, its massive bulk casting a shadow over Station 7. The crew scrambled to stabilize the station, but the gravitational pull was too strong. Panels sparked, and lights flickered as the structure groaned under the strain. "They're testing us again," Daniel muttered, gripping the console tightly. "Seeing how much we can take." Laura ignored him, her focus locked on the screen. She couldn't afford distractions. Every second counted. She activated the synchronization program, linking the stations together. The hum of machinery grew louder as power surged through the network. Outside, the Vrin ship seemed to notice the sudden spike in energy. It lingered, watching. "Now or never," Laura whispered, her finger hovering over the activation button. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do it." She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, beams of light shot out from the Titan stations, converging into a single, blinding pulse. It struck the Vrin flagship with devastating force, engulfing it in a burst of energy. The explosion lit up the sky, so bright it could be seen from Earth's surface. For a few heart-stopping seconds, everything went silent. Then, slowly, the Vrin fleet began to scatter. Smaller ships retreated, their formations breaking apart. The flagship, damaged but not destroyed, drifted away from Earth's orbit. Laura slumped back in her chair, relief washing over her. It worked. Daniel exhaled sharply, wiping sweat from his brow. For now. But what happens when they regroup? Laura didn't answer. She stared at the screens, watching the remnants of the fleet disappear into the void. The victory felt hollow. The Titan stations were crippled, their defenses useless. And the Vrin, though beaten back, weren't gone. As sunlight returned to Earth, casting long shadows across the planet, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had only delayed the inevitable. The Vrin would be back, and next time, they wouldn't show mercy. The aftermath of the pulse was chaos. The Titan stations, now drained of power, floated silently in orbit like lifeless husks. Engineers scrambled to repair the damage, but it was clear the network wouldn't be operational anytime soon. Earth's defenses were gone, leaving the planet exposed and vulnerable. Laura and Daniel watched from Station 7 as the last of the Vrin ships disappeared into the distance, their massive forms fading into the blackness of space. "They'll be back," Daniel said quietly, his voice heavy with dread. He stood by the observation window, staring at the empty void where the fleet had been moments before. "This isn't over." Laura nodded, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She felt a strange mix of relief and unease. They had struck a blow against the Vrin, but at a terrible cost. Without the Titan stations, humanity had no way to defend itself if the aliens returned. And they would return. That much was certain. General Carter arrived shortly after, his face grim. He had seen the explosion from Earth and demanded an explanation. When Laura and Daniel revealed what they had done, he didn't yell or threaten them. Instead, he simply sighed, rubbing his temples as if trying to stave off a headache. "You gambled everything on one shot," he said finally, "and it paid off for now. But we're sitting ducks without those stations. If they come back, we won't survive another attack." We bought ourselves time, Laura replied firmly. That's all we could do. The Pulse disabled their flagship and scattered their fleet. It'll take them weeks, maybe months, to regroup. Time isn't enough, Carter snapped. We need solutions, not delays. As the argument unfolded, Ambassador Ryan entered the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by visible tension. We've received a transmission, he announced, holding up a tablet. From the Vryn. Everyone froze. Laura stepped forward, her heart pounding. What does it say? Ryan hesitated before reading aloud. You have proven your strength. We will withdraw for now. But know this, defiance will not go unpunished. Surrender unconditionally when we return or face annihilation. The room fell silent. The message was short, cold, and unmistakably threatening. The Vryn weren't just angry, they were planning retaliation. Daniel broke the silence first. So much for diplomacy. Ryan shook his head, frustration etched on his face. They've made their position clear. They don't see us as equals. To them, we're either subjects or obstacles. And they'll crush anyone who stands in their way, Laura added softly. She turned back to the window, watching as Earth rotated slowly below them. The planet looked peaceful, oblivious to the storm brewing beyond its skies. Over the next few days, Earth's leaders worked frantically to prepare for the inevitable return of the Vryn. Scientists and engineers collaborated to rebuild the Titan stations, though progress was slow. Resources were stretched thin, and morale was low. People around the world lived in fear, unsure if they would wake up to another attack. Laura spent most of her time analyzing data from the Pulse, searching for any clues about the Vryn's weaknesses. She discovered that while the flagship had been severely damaged, its core systems remained intact. Whatever powered the ship was far more advanced than anything humanity possessed. They're not invincible, she told Daniel one evening, pointing to a series of readings on her screen. Their shields faltered during the pulse. If we can replicate that effect on a larger scale, we might stand a chance. But we don't have the resources, Daniel reminded her. Not anymore. Laura clenched her fists, determination burning in her eyes. Then we'll find a way. We have to. Outside, the stars twinkled faintly, their light a stark contrast to the darkness looming ahead. Humanity had survived the first encounter, but the war was far from over. As Earth braced for the Vryn's return, Laura couldn't help but wonder if they were fighting a battle they couldn't win, or if somewhere, deep in the vastness of space, there was still hope for salvation. Weeks turned into months, and the Vryn did not return. Earth remained on edge, its skies quiet but its people restless. The Titan stations were still under repair, their skeletal frames floating like ghosts in orbit. Laura and Daniel worked tirelessly alongside teams of engineers, racing against time to rebuild humanity's defenses. But no matter how hard they tried, progress felt painfully slow. The memory of the Vryn's ultimatum lingered in everyone's minds, a constant reminder that peace was only temporary. Laura often found herself staring at the stars, wondering what the Vryn were doing out there. Were they regrouping, planning their next move, or had they decided Earth wasn't worth the effort? She wanted to believe the latter, but deep down, she knew better. The Vryn didn't strike her as the type to give up easily. They'll come back, Daniel said one evening as they sat together in the control room. His voice was calm, but his hands were clenched tightly around a mug of coffee. And when they do, we need to be ready. We're trying, Laura replied softly. But it's not enough. Even if we fix the stations, it won't match their power. Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on the monitors displaying Earth's orbit. Maybe strength isn't the answer. Maybe we need something else, something they don't expect. Laura looked at him curiously. What do you mean? He hesitated before speaking. The pulse worked because it caught them off guard. They didn't think we could hit them that hard. If we can find another way to surprise them, maybe we can hold them off again. Laura thought about his words, turning them over in her mind. It was a risky idea, but it might be their only chance. Over the next few days, she poured all her energy into studying the data from the pulse, searching for patterns or weaknesses in the Vrin's technology. What she found gave her a glimmer of hope. The Vrin relied heavily on synchronized systems to coordinate their fleet. If they could disrupt those systems again, it might buy humanity more time. As winter approached, Earth began to change. The fear that had gripped the planet slowly gave way to resilience. People came together, sharing resources and ideas, determined to survive. Scientists developed new technologies inspired by fragments of the Vrin signals, while leaders worked to unite nations under a common goal. For the first time in months, there was a sense of purpose, a fragile but growing belief that humanity could endure. Then, one cold night, the warning came. Observatories detected movement near the edge of the solar system. A fleet of ships, smaller than before, but unmistakably Vrin, was approaching. Panic rippled through Earth, but this time, humanity wasn't caught off guard. Laura and Daniel activated the repaired Titan stations, using everything they had learned to prepare for battle. When the Vrin arrived, they struck quickly, aiming directly at Earth's weakened defenses. But humanity fought back with everything they had. Beams of energy shot out from the stations, targeting the alien ship's weak points. Explosions lit up the sky as both sides clashed in a desperate struggle for survival. In the end, it wasn't brute force that saved Earth. It was ingenuity. Using the knowledge they had gained, Laura and Daniel managed to disrupt the Vrin's coordination systems, scattering their fleet once again. The aliens retreated, leaving behind a trail of debris and unanswered questions. As dawn broke over Earth, Laura stood on the observation deck, watching the horizon glow with the first light of morning. Humanity had survived, but the cost had been high. The Titan stations were damaged beyond repair, and the scars of battle would take years to heal. "We did it," Daniel said, joining her at the window. "For now, at least." Laura nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars. "It's not over, not really. But maybe we've proven something." "What's that?" Daniel asked. "That even in the face of impossible odds," Laura said quietly, "we don't give up. We adapt. We fight. And we keep moving forward." Outside, the universe stretched endlessly, vast and unknowable. Earth was just a small part of it, but for now, it was safe. And as the sun rose higher, painting the sky with streaks of gold, Laura allowed herself a moment of hope for the future and for whatever lay beyond the stars. The victory over the Vrin fleet was bittersweet. Earth had survived, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone. Cities still bore the scars of panic and destruction caused by the initial invasion scare. Families mourned loved ones lost during the chaos, and resources were stretched thin as nations worked to rebuild what had been damaged. The Titan stations, once symbols of humanity's strength, now drifted silently in orbit, their broken forms a reminder of how close the planet had come to disaster. Laura spent most of her days in a makeshift lab aboard Station 7, poring over data from the battle. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable. The Vrin hadn't been defeated, they had retreated. And retreats often led to stronger, more calculated attacks. Daniel joined her frequently, bringing updates on Earth's recovery efforts and the slow progress of repairing the stations. Neither of them spoke much about the future. Both knew it was uncertain at best. One evening, as the sun dipped below Earth's horizon, casting long shadows across the station, Laura noticed something unusual. A faint signal, almost imperceptible, pulsed through the void. It wasn't like the Vrin's earlier communications. This one was different, quieter, almost hesitant. At first, she thought it might be interference or a glitch in the system. But when she analyzed it further, she realized it wasn't coming from the direction of the Vrin fleet. It was coming from somewhere else entirely. "Daniel," she called out, her voice sharp with urgency. "You need to see this." He hurried over, his face lined with exhaustion. "What is it?" She pointed to her screen, where a series of waveforms flickered faintly. Another signal. "It's not the Vrin." Daniel frowned, leaning closer. Where's it coming from? I don't know yet, Laura admitted. But it's different. Softer. Like whoever's sending it doesn't want to startle us. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The implications were staggering. If this wasn't the Vryn, then who, or what, was trying to contact Earth? Could there be others out there, watching and waiting? We should tell Carter, Daniel said finally. No, Laura replied firmly. Not yet. Let me decode more of it first. If we rush into this, we could make a mistake. Over the next few days, Laura worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery of the new signal. It was slow going, but eventually, fragments of a message began to emerge. Unlike the Vryn's cold, calculated transmissions, this one carried warmth and curiosity. Whoever was sending it seemed genuinely interested in humanity, not as a resource or obstacle, but as a people. It's an invitation, Laura whispered one night, her eyes wide with disbelief. She turned to Daniel, holding up her tablet. They're inviting us to meet them. Somewhere safe. Daniel stared at her, his mind racing. Do we trust them? What if it's a trap? I don't think so, Laura said softly. This feels different, like they want to help. The decision wasn't easy. Trusting another alien race after the Vryn's betrayal felt reckless, even foolish. But Laura couldn't ignore the possibility that this new signal represented hope, a chance for humanity to learn, to grow, and maybe even find allies in the vastness of space. In the end, they decided to take the risk. With General Carter's reluctant approval, a small team prepared to travel to the coordinates provided in the message. Laura insisted on going herself, despite Daniel's protests. We started this, she told him. I need to see it through. As the ship launched into the stars, Laura looked back at Earth, its blue-green surface glowing faintly against the darkness. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and survived. Now, it stood on the brink of something new, something unknown. For the first time in months, Laura allowed herself to feel a spark of optimism. Whatever lay ahead, humanity would face it together, reaching for the stars with courage and determination.